So for today, David Kelly is a rabid science news follower with a passion for physics. He writes fast-paced, near-future sci-fi thrillers with engaging characters, cynical humor, and he says usually plausible science. Don't go away, we'll be right back. If you've just joined us, then welcome to the Writers' Corner live show. I'm your host, Bridgetti Limbanda from Cape Town in South Africa. And our stream is made possible by BeLive Media, Creative Edge, and StreamYard. So warm welcome whether you're watching us over on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and also over on Amazon Live. A very warm welcome to you. This is an audience-centric show, so please feel free to say hello in the comments. And if you've never watched us before, let me know, then we will give you a shout out. In today's show, we're going to be talking to David M. Kelly. And he is a sci-fi author. But before we invite David onto the show, and before I bring on my amazing co-host, Mary Elizabeth Jackson, of almost 4 years, wow, where does the time go to? One of the things we're all about on the Writers' Corner live show is we are, as you know, after 4 years of doing this, we're incredibly passionate about helping authors level up. And one of the things that authors are still having to do these days and in the foreseeable future is hybrid is the way forward. And so one of the things that you can do to level up on your online appearance is to invest in a webcam if you want to look better. And the one that I use is the Logitech Brio. I highly recommend any of the Logitech cameras. That is if you can't afford a higher end DSLR cameras, but most of the authors, I think, will not be using that. In fact, most of the authors I know of do go ahead and they use their phone camera. Nothing wrong with that. The phone cameras have come a long way. They are amazing. But here's just a quick tip for you. I don't know if you've ever gone online and you see those black lines on the side of your screen. Well, one way to deal with that is to turn your phone into landscape. And if you are using your phone, I want to highly recommend that you put your phone onto a tripod, because if your phone is shaking while you're live, it makes people feel seasick, and you don't want to do that. It also helps you hold it frees up your hands if your phone is in the tripod, so you can talk, you can be a bit more expressive, you can hold your book in your hand, and it's just a whole better experience for your viewers. So do get a gimbal of some sorts, get an ioographer, get something like the DJI Osmo. There's a whole lot of tools and things that you want to use. One thing you do want to make sure of, though, is that people can hear you loud and clearly. And so one of the things you can do is invest in a lapel microphone like this one, which is the Rode lavalier microphone, because people will tune out, or they'll forgive you if your camera is less than perfect, but if they can't hear you, you will completely lose your audience. So do invest in some kind of a camera. I use the Samsung condenser microphone, but you don't need anything as fancy as that. A lapel microphone will be fantastic. So now let me invite my amazing co-host, Mary Elizabeth Jackson. She is a special needs and disabilities advocate and also an award-winning author in her own right. Her latest release is with Thornton Klein. It's called Cheers from Heaven, so do go and check that out. Mary's also a ghostwriter. So let me just bring on Mary to join me. Yes, before we bring on David. Mary, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great today. It's a little hot where we are. It's a little cold where you are. So that makes us global, which is awesome.
Oh, yeah. I'm sitting by the fire while, you've got some natural heating going on there.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 110 today and tomorrow and the next several days, really high up like that. So we're just like, oh, we're praying for rain, but I'm doing great. We're so excited about our author today and getting to know him and share his journey and story with others and bring him some new fans.
Absolutely. So for those of you who have not met David or read any of his books yet, David is the author of the Joe Ballen, Logan's World, and the Hyperia Jones series. So each one of them is a series in their own right.
Yes.
And as I said before, he is a great, ginormous science news follower with a passion for physics. And he writes fast-paced, near-future sci-fi thrillers with engaging characters, cynical humor, and usually plausible science, is what he said. So let's welcome our amazing author to join us on screen, shall we?
Absolutely. Hi, David.
David, welcome to the show. So glad to have you join us today. This is amazing. And we're going to dive right. What's the weather like on your end of the world? I've got to just ask.
It's actually really wet and raining really badly today.
Although it's raining.
Wow.
Okay, so since you're a science guy, can you just push it down into the States? Okay. Because you're above me in Canada, right?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Yeah, we need you to push some of that down here. We need it.
Yeah, it's been very variable. We've had like really seriously warm weather. Last week it was kind of like 36 degrees, and today it's kind of 14 and just kind of bucketing down. So.
Oh my goodness. The weather's like a box of chocolates, right? You never know what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. David, I'm going to jump right in. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey into becoming a full-time writer. And I know that's every author's dream, is to become a full-time writer. It's something every author works towards. How did that happen for you? Tell us a little bit about you.
It was a very strange and sort of twisting story, actually. I started writing when I was doing a very long commute to work by train back in England. And I wanted something to do. And I'd always wanted to try my hand at writing. So I started writing then. I wrote what became my first novel, although it was never published and never will be because it was terrible, but it was good enough to get me hooked. And so then,
I always say we all start at chapter 1, right? We've all got to start somewhere.
Yeah. So I carried on writing, sort of learning the tricks of the trade for several years. I wrote my became my first published novel, Mathematics of Eternity. That actually took me around about 15 years because I was writing it while I was working in very stressful jobs and so on. And then the actual kind of final thing that set me on the full-time author path was that I had a very serious medical issue. Where my foot got badly infected and I had a partial foot amputation. And after that, I was literally laid on my back for kind of over a year. And so during that time, I finished this novel that I'd been working on for so long and wrote the sequel. And after that, when I started to recover and get, healthier, I realized I didn't want to go back to work and I wanted to carry on writing full time. So I did.
Well, that is a journey in itself. As authors, you've kind of answered a little bit of what I was going to ask you about, but as authors, all of us have hurdles, and I don't, it doesn't really matter who you are as an author. Even the famous ones have had humongous hurdles to overcome. So what would you say is one of your greatest hurdles, and how did you overcome that besides the physical issue that you went through, and we're, sorry to hear about that. But, as a writer, what did you have to overcome I guess it went along with that. Would you connect, would that have all been a part of what was going on at that time in your life?
I think the biggest hurdle for me actually was just probably learning how to write. I was a very, very big reader as a child. I read through my way through entire libraries. But when I started to write, I kind of had this idea that, you just sat down, you typed out the words, and that was it. You had a story. I didn't really know anything about things like editing and proofing and so on. And so literally it was kind of like the biggest hurdle was actually just, understanding how the process worked and finding out my own kind of path through that process, that was something that worked for me. So I actually, before the first novel that I had published, I actually wrote 2.5 complete novels. Again, none of those will ever see the light of day. And then I started reading more about, kind of like how to improve your craft and so on. And then I started writing short stories because they were kind of like quicker and easier to learn from. So I wrote a whole bunch of short stories and started trying to submit those to magazines. I did actually finally get published by a Canadian magazine, actually, called Neopsis. And that was kind of like how I did it. It was a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of investment just trying to understand the process.
So that's very interesting that you said that, David. But you're not a novice at being an author now. You've got a few series under your belt. You've got a couple of books under your belt. So I'm curious. A lot of first-time authors may be under the mistaken thinking that you write your book and the money's just going to start rolling in. But most authors know that that's not how it works exactly. I think many authors wish it's the way it works, but life doesn't work that way. As in your journey as an author over the last couple of years, was there anything that you failed at, and what did you learn from it that made you grow as an author?
I never actually had the although I didn't really understand the writing process, I never really thought that the path was going to be easy or quick. So that aspect of it was not really too much of a surprise to me. I expected it to be a long journey, and it has. It's been a slow climb, and I.
So you were quite realistic about your expectations.
Yes, I say I didn't really expect to publish sort of one thing and just suddenly it would take off. But at the same time, I have to say, when you're kind of working on your own, stuck in your office or whatever, and you're releasing books and the sales don't come. Sometimes that can weigh very heavily on you, and we all I think as authors we all go through these points where we think, why am I doing this? Shouldn't I be maybe doing something else? And I think one of the biggest challenges for everybody who tries to write books is just actually kind of keeping going and kind of keeping the dedication to invest the time and the effort and the work to actually kind of get to the point where they do start to see returns on those investments, and that can be very, very hard sometimes.
Yeah, patience and tenacity, I think, are two of the main ingredients needed for this profession, if this is what you choose to do, because most authors that I know that are successful, I think it's, you can look at anywhere from a 5 to 10 year investment of your time. It seems pretty realistic. Yes, a lot of them on 5 years, but then there are some that are 10 years before anything really happened for them. So we know your background includes science. So I guess was it an automatic thing for you to go into writing sci-fi, becoming that kind of storyteller, or did you actually contemplate other genres? What drew you into being this kind of a storyteller?
I've always had an interest in science, and especially space, anything related to space, since I was a very young child. And I'm aging myself now, but when I was 6, my parents allowed me to stay up and watch the first moon landing, and that just kind of like captured my imagination. And so when I started reading lots and lots of things, I was naturally drawn to science fiction stories because of that. And so when I actually started writing it, it was just kind of like a natural choice for me to kind of like try and move into that particular genre. Although I have got book ideas sketched out for things that aren't science fiction, but so far I'm enjoying the science fiction so much that I haven't had time to develop that.
It's a really fun world because there's no boundaries, right? So there's no boundaries, there's no rules, and you can just write whatever you want. It's just crazy as you want, right? Because do you find the crazier of what you write, the more your fans love it?
I tend to sort of disagree somewhat with the idea that you can write anything, because this is where the kind of mostly plausible science bit comes in. It's like I take great care on most of my books to kind of make sure that the science and the technology and the physics and so on is actually correct. So I can't just do anything. Although you can have any kind of ideas you want, but there are kind of like limits and so on. But it's a wonderful genre for kind of like exploring people in kind of strange environments, in strange circumstances. And I think that's one of the things that like really kind of, is the attraction for me and a lot of science fiction fans, is that, you can see people kind of living and reacting and finding their way through problems in environments that are completely different to the ones that we know. And that often kind of like then acts as a reflection of our own lives now. And so I think it's a wonderful medium, and it's something I just absolutely love doing.
That's awesome. David, do you have a favorite sci-fi author that you have admired over the years, perhaps? And I also want to know, where do you draw your inspiration from for your own stories, and specifically Mathematics of Eternity? I want to know where the inspiration came from.
Well, my favorite authors kind of somewhat more classically tend to be people like Robert Heinlein, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke. More recently, I like the James Corey Expanse books, and Martha Wells' Murderbot books. The inspiration for Mathematics of Eternity, strangely enough, came from the old sort of noir fiction that we had in sort of like the 1930s and 40s. And I really liked those kind of books and those kind of movies, and I wanted to bring that kind of feeling but into a science fictional world. And so the hero of Mathematics of Eternity is kind of like a very fast talking, loudmouthed space engineer who basically is a bit of a smart ass, and he it gets him into a lot of trouble. So that's really where it came from, and the whole kind of like story, like in the first book, is very much a kind of a noir thriller, but set in the future in futuristic Baltimore.
Nice, very nice. I like the sarcastic, smart aleck part. That makes for a good character, doesn't it, David?
Yeah.
They're kind of fun people to deal with sometimes in your own life, and I think there's a bit of sarcasm in most of us, anyways. So, do you have your book with you? We'd love to have you read a favorite couple of pages that you have, or do you have a favorite spot, or do you have several favorites?
I don't really do live reads kind of typically, so I'm a bit stuck on that. But I mean, I can read like the first couple of pages if you like.
Do you feel comfortable to do that? We'd love for you to, if you feel comfortable enough.
I'll give it a try.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna take a sip of coffee, and we're ready to go. Right, Brigetti? Brigetti's got something too to drink. What do you got? All right, let's go.
I'm in coffee as well.
Okay.
Coffee addict. Okay, so this is chapter 1. Negotiations between the assembled Earth nations and atoll representatives broke down today, with no relaxation of the restrictions on Earth-based extra-orbital operations. General Chadwick from the Combined Atoll Security Forces stated there would be a vigorous response to any attempt by Earth to increase operations outside low Earth orbit, other than the Mars mining operation. He also said that his boycott included the Starship. I stabbed the off button hard enough to make the plastic click sound like a gun had gone off inside the car. The news shouldn't have bothered me, but it did. The fact that I used to work in space was part of it. The fact that I couldn't any longer was another. But mostly it was because the atolls were right. We didn't deserve another chance. I pulled up outside the case, waiting for the traffic lights to change. The rain on the windshield distorted the garish neon and hollow projections from the bar into painful tracks that turned ghostly after images on my retina. I rubbed my face to ease the ache in my eyes, a 2-day growth of beard rasping against my palms. Time to polish up a bit, Ballen. Otherwise, someone's going to think you stole this cab. It had been that kind of night. The only thing keeping me going was the thought that my tour was over for another 12 hours. The cab booked, and I grabbed the shuddering controls, wrestling the car into a level attitude. The door hissed open as someone slid in the back. The turbines whined as the stability systems fought to compensate for the shift in weight distribution. And for a second, I thought we were going to plummet to the ground. I cursed loudly, my fingers only slowly releasing the death grip I had on the controls as the motion steadied, not caring if my new passenger heard. The old adage was true. There really is always one. You better watch yourself, Chief. My cab had been almost a meter away from the jump-off platform, a potential disaster when you're 60 meters up at L4. That's not a choice likely to take you to retirement. All I could see in the mirror was a dark shadow filling the entire back seat. I'm off duty. You have to call someone else. 273 Farland Road, L1, Rossmore. The voice had a liquid rasp that didn't sound like it came from drink alone, more like the death rattle from a set of lungs drowning in a sea of flesh. Maybe he hadn't heard. I sure didn't want a 40-kilometer detour on my own clock. The light's out, Chief. I'm off duty. Give me a break and get out. I nudged against the jump off and reopened the door. He didn't move, and I turned around to get my first proper look at him. Purple and red bar lights reflected on his waxy skin, and he must have weighed well over 180 kilos. A sweat-drenched green jacket molded itself to both his torso and the seat, making his face look sickly. I couldn't remember ever seeing anyone so overweight outside historicals. Everything about him was bloated, from the head that flowed directly into his shoulders without the benefit of an intervening neck, to the corpulent fingers gripping the whole parahide seat as if he were scared he'd fall off the world. It was no wonder the car had struggled. He was a one-man weight restriction violation. Sometimes when the circuits fail, all you can do is accept it and recover. There wasn't a chance I'd be able to get him out single-handed. It would be easier to take him where he wanted to go and hope he was sober enough to get out under his own steam. I shrugged and hit the meter. The lights had long since gone green, so I eased the throttle forward to minimize my motion sickness. The last thing I needed was the alcoholic excess in his gut emptying in the back of my cab. Then, as if I needed anything else to make my night miserable, an asshole in a Sabre cut me up from below, his streamlined taillight almost clipping the front of the cab as I wrestled to keep things together in the turbulent wash from the Arrest Me red sports car. I shook my head. Life's too short, I muttered.
Wow. David, that's awesome. I mean, I could picture that whole thing like in movie. You know what I mean? Like I could see the scenes in my head. That's amazing. Well, we are very honored. Thank you for reading for us today. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. David, thank you so much for stopping by the Writers' Corner live show. It was great to have you on the show. Just to hear a little bit about your background, who you are, and the cherry on the cake, of course, was you reading a section out of your book, Mathematics of Eternity. So anyone who's watching the show over on Amazon Live, or if you're not watching on Amazon Live, scoot over to Amazon and grab a copy of the book. So if you're on Amazon, that book is in the carousel, and feel free to go and grab a copy of David's book. Well, I want to say thank you to our amazing audience, everyone who's joined us live. And if you're going to be catching the show on the replay, enjoy that. And David, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for telling us a little bit about you. And we'd love to have you back again sometime in the future. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. It's been a wonderful experience.
Thank you, David.
Big pleasure. Take care, everyone. We'll see you back next week, same time, same place, on another episode of the Writers' Corner live show.